Bienvenue, mes enfants. I've got some news. I've had a few questions about how the new ECM Synchronika 2 manages water and group temperatures. In my first review, I found that the warm-up of both the brew boiler and the group was complete in under 5 minutes, and you could start pulling shots immediately. I concluded that the machine was near perfect, and I could cite only 2 trivial complaints. A day after posting, I chose a higher water temperature of 95 degrees to accommodate a particular coffee sample, and I noticed that the group was overheating when the machine idled for 15 or so minutes. I saw significant flash boiling, and I did a second video about that. I later discovered from repeated tests that 95 and above always led to flash boiling if the machine had been on for a while. My initial guess was that the group heat was coming on periodically in response to temperature drops, and further that its behavior suggested group temperature was based on the water temperature set point. And that turns out to be true, although it wasn't documented. In the first video, I mentioned that there's an adjustment for fine-tuning the brew boiler temperature offset. I later found that there's also an adjustable offset for the group temperature in the service menu or technical menu, plus an option to monitor the group temperature on the display. You can do a lot more with the service menu, including PID programming. So this is some proper voodoo that might make one reconsider the Lelite Bianca solely on the strength of its configurability and community support. I had an overheating problem starting at 95 degrees. But espresso can go a little higher. I think most coffee drinkers would agree that 96 degrees is a sensible maximum water temperature for espresso. So I'm looking for the machine to hold that temperature without any flash boiling. Beyond 96 degrees, I don't really care, and I doubt anyone else would. I'm going to spare you all the steps it took me to arrive here, but I will tell you that there are 2 adjustments that worked for me. The first is located in the normal advanced user menu called Coffee Offset Correction. It lets you fine-tune the brew boiler temperature offset. It's set at +2 at the factory. I found that -3 worked better for me, at least with a high water temperature. The other setting is in the service menu or technical menu, and it's labeled E3. That will let you fine-tune the group temperature offset, which is referenced off the water temperature set point. So if your water set point is 96 and you choose -2 here, your group will heat to 94 or thereabouts. So to access the service menu, simply switch on the machine and immediately press the rotary selector. Hang on, before you run off to play, wait until, or skip to, the end where I show you how to reset the factory defaults. First, I'll add the group temperature to the display with the setting labeled, Show Brewing Head Temp. I have verified this reading with an infrared thermometer, and these are within 1 degree of each other. Now for the E3 setting, which lets you adjust the group temperature offset. It's really quite straightforward. To exit this menu, just switch the machine off and back on. So what did I end up using? Eventually, I changed both offsets to -3. But be aware that your mileage may vary. That might be your starting point, but you might need to tweak these values up or down because the boiler and group temperatures are affected by ambient conditions. Okay, so the moment of truth. The machine has been idle for a good 15 minutes. 96 showing on the boiler and 95 on the group. And there is some minor flash boiling, but it's nothing like the crazy behavior I saw with the default settings at 95 degrees, much less 96. I think this is as close as I can get it because if I open those offsets wider, the actual water temperature at the spout might be lower than the display. I want the set point on the display and the water out within a degree of each other. So let's check. We're reading 96 on the water and 95 on the group. So let's see what the thermometer says. Nailed it. This is as good as it's going to get. If I want actual 96 degree water out, like this, I'll have to live with a hint of boiling. Incidentally, at a slightly cooler 95 degree set point, there is no boiling no matter how long I wait. So that much at least has been cured. I did try 96 degrees with -4 offset on both adjustments, and it cured the flash boiling completely. However, the temperature at the spout was 94.5, or more than a degree off. I'll stick with temperature accuracy. In spite of the hint of boiling, the water at the spout was the exact temperature I chose. And because it was correct, no cooling flush would be needed, or even desirable. Flushing the group before a shot is not a good idea on a dual boiler system. Your best thermal stability for successive shots is when a minimum of fresh water enters the brew boiler. So flush the head and rinse the portafilter after pulling a series of shots, then let the system recover for 5 minutes or so. But hang on a minute, there's one more test. I have to see if my changes have thrown lower temperature brewing out of spec. So I'm going to drop the set point way down to 90 without changing any other setting. It's spot on. So the adjustments I made could perhaps have been slightly more aggressive. Now, something else for you to consider. If you turn on the machine and just make a few cups of coffee and then shut it off, none of this overheating business is likely to bother you, even with a high set point. But if you leave it on for like 30 or 40 minutes or more, heat issues might come up. Your machine's typical service period or uptime is another important variable alongside ambient temperature that you'll have to factor into your tinkering. I'm testing this machine and pushing it to and even past its limits, so my service uptime is long. It's hours. A shorter period of uptime will naturally prefer narrower offsets than I'm using. And for a machine that's on all day, like in an office, you might need wider offsets, like -4 degrees, say. So now I've let the genie out of the bottle. You've got full access to the PID settings, which you can, of course, play with, although I should warn you that you might be surprised by how wildly out of whack the machine can get in response to seemingly modest changes. Now, have no fear. If you make a pig's breakfast of it, you can reset the factory defaults easily. Just switch the machine off, raise the brew lever to the top position, then switch on and press the selector knob as you would to access the service menu. Switch off and back on, and you're safely back at square one. If you reset the factory defaults, you'll be prompted to fill the machine for first-time use because they ship with the boilers empty, and this setting prevents the brew boiler's heating element from switching on unless the pump has been running for 20 or 30 seconds. The service boiler has a water level probe that automatically keeps the heat off when it's empty, so that's not a worry. You can turn off the first-time use fill requirement using the service menu, but be absolutely certain the brew boiler is full. Dry heating the element can wreck it. If I were to offer any further criticism, it might be that the integration of the two systems, the boiler and thermosiphon on one hand, the resistance heat on the other, isn't quite seamless yet. But I see no issues with the factory settings if you keep it at 94 degrees or less, and there's plenty of room for you to dial it in if you're so inclined. Now all we need is the kind of community support network that the Lilith Bianca enjoys. This is a very serviceable machine, capable of fine-tuning, reasonably priced, that heats up almost immediately and is built to last. I am, again, very impressed and completely satisfied with my purchase. Well, that's all for now. I'll be around during the August holiday, as I took my break in May and June, as I often do. I've got a video unrelated to coffee in the pipeline, which I hope you'll enjoy. So keep in touch. Cheers.